June 1944, the Allies launched an attack on Germany's forces in Normandy, western France. Thousands of transports carried an invasion army under the supreme command of General Eisenhower to the Normandy beach. The Germans, who had been fed false information about a landing near Calais, rushed their troops to the area, but were unable to prevent the Allies from forming a solid bridgehead. For the Allies, it was essential to first capture a port, gaining a strong foothold in European soil, secure the logistic route, and plan for final attack on Nazi Germany. With the Allied army to the west and Soviet army to the east, the Nazi Germany is cornered and forced into defensive stance. Nevertheless, for the Alliance army, one thing is certain: the end of the Second World War is draws near. However, for the Alliance, winning the war is just one thing. As the world is still in critical condition, new concerns were surfacing. The destruction brought by the Second World War was still devastating. The economy of Germany, France, Poland, and many others that participated in World War II were all in shambles. Cities had been bombed and turned into ruins. Healthcare and police infrastructure and even housing were barely existent. It has now become a new concern for the Alliance to make a plan to rebuild and shape the new world after war ends.
At Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, delegates from 44 Allied and Associated...
On 1st July 1944, the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference, or later mostly known as the Bretton Woods Conference, is held at the Mount Washington Hotel, Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, United States. The conference, attended by 730 delegates from all 44 Allied nations, and lasted for 21 days. This conference was proposed to regulate the international monetary and financial order after the conclusion of the World War II. The debate within the conference itself dominated by the United Kingdom and the United States. From all 730 delegates that comes to the conference, there are two most notable individuals that stood out from the other delegates. They are John Maynard Keynes, representing United Kingdom, and Harry Dexter White, representing United States, which both throughout the conference brought up several ideas that later become the main ideas of the Bretton Woods Agreement. There are two main points that established within this agreement. First, the adoption of US dollar as new international standard currency, and second, the establishment of two international institutions: the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, or IBRD. Both John Maynard Keynes and Harry Dexter White later attributed as the founding father of these two institutions.
The world for rebuild its civilization after World War II. lead them for construct organization of International Bank. The International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, better known as the World Bank, was established in 1944 to help Europe recover from the devastation of World War II. In the first appearance, their mandate was to help development and reconstruction of European countries in the aftermath of World War II. Before 1974, the reconstruction and development loans provided by the World Bank were relatively small. The bank staff were aware of the need to instill confidence in the bank. Fiscal conservatism ruled, and loan application had to meet strict criteria. The first country to receive a World Bank loan was France. The bank's president at the time, John McCloy, chose France over two other applicants, Poland and Chile. The loan was for $250 million US, half the amount requested, and it came with a strict condition. France had to agree to produce a balanced budget and give priority of debt repayment to the World Bank over other governments. World Bank staff closely monitored the use of the funds to ensure that the French government met the conditions. In addition, before the loan was approved, the United States Department told the French government that its members associated with the Communist Party would first have to be removed. The French government complied and removed the Communist coalition government, the so-called tripartite. Within hours, the loan to France was approved. When the Marshall Plan went into effect in 1947, many European countries began receiving aid from other sources. Faced with this competition, the World Bank shifts its focus to non-European countries. Until 1968, its loans were earmarked for the construction of infrastructure works such as seaports, highway systems, and power plants that would generate enough income to enable borrower country to repay the loan. In 1960, the International Development Association was formed, as opposed to a UN fund named SUNFED, providing soft loans to developing countries. In the early 1950s, reports from the United Nations and the US government supported the establishment of a program to lend to poor countries on concessional terms with the backing of multilateral donors. After initial deliberation, the idea to create the International Development Association, or IDA, an agency to provide soft loans to developing countries, was floated within IBRD under the stewardship of President Eugene Black. Together, IDA and IBRD form what later known as the World Bank. Many of the issues developing countries face do not respect borders. By helping address these problems, IDA works to mitigate security, environmental, and health concerns and prevents these threats from becoming global issues. From fiscal years 2011 until 2017, IDA financing immunized 250 million children, provided access to better water service for 72 million people, and recruited or trained more than 8 million teachers. On 27 December 1945, Belgium, Bolivia, Canada, China, Egypt, Ethiopia, France, Greece, Honduras, Iceland, India, Iraq, US, South Africa, UK, Philippines, Norway, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Those 19 countries are becoming a first membership of World Bank, and now 189 countries are the member of IBRD. Lately membership country is Nauru, who joined in 12 April 2016, especially for Indonesia, become a member of World Bank in 13 April 1967. Country who want to become a member of the bank. Under the IBRD Articles of Agreement, a country must first join the International Monetary Fund, or IMF. Membership in IDA, IFC, and MIGA are conditional on membership in IBRD. And IDA has grown to include 173 member countries and has become the leading source of concessional lending to 75 of the world's poorest countries, with 39 countries in Africa. Overall,
44 countries have graduated from IDA, and some have reverse graduated or re-entered IDA. Since its inception, IDA credits and grants have totaled $145 billion US, averaging $18 billion US over the last 3 years. Romania became the last country that became a member of IDA in 12 April 2004.
From 1974 to 1980, the bank concentrated on meeting the basic needs of people in the developing world. The size and numbers of loans to borrowers was greatly increased as loan target expanded from infrastructure to social service and other sectors. These changes can be attributed to Robert McNamara, who was appointed to the presidency of 1968 by Lyndon B. Johnson. McNamara employed bank treasurer Eugene Warburg to seek out new sources of capital outside of the northern banks that had been primary sources of funding. Warburg used the global bond market to increase the capital available to the bank. One consequence is the period of poverty and elevation, landing most rapid rise of the third world debt. In 1967 to 1980, the developing world debt rose at an average annual rate of 20%. In 1980s, the World Bank Administrative Tribunal was established to decide on disputes between the World Bank Group and its staff, where the allegation of non-observance of contracts of employment or terms of appointment had not been honored.
In 1980, McNamara was succeeded by U.S. President Jimmy Carter's nominee, Alden W. Clausen. Clausen replaced many members of McNamara's staff and crafted a different mission emphasis. His 1982 decision to replace the bank's chief economist, Hollis visionary, with Anna Kruger was an example of this new focus. Kruger was known for her criticism of development funding and for describing third world governments as rent-seeking states. During the 1980s, the bank emphasized lending to service third world debt and structural adjustment policies designed to streamline the economies of developing nations. UNICEF reported in the late 1980s that the structural adjustment programs of the World Bank had been responsible for reduced health, nutritional, and educational level for tens of millions of children in Asia, Latin America, and Africa.
Beginning in 1989, in response to harsh criticism from many groups, the bank began including environmental groups and NGOs in its work to mitigate the past effect of its development policies that had prompted the criticism. It also formed an implementing agency in accordance with Montreal Protocols to stop ozone depletion damage to the Earth's atmosphere by phasing out the use of 95% of ozone-depleting chemicals with a target date of 2015. Since then, in accordance with its so-called 6 strategic themes, the bank has put various additional policies into effect to preserve the environment while promoting development. For example, in 1991, the bank announced that to protect against deforestation, especially in the Amazon, it would not finance any commercial logging or infrastructure projects that harm the environment. In order to promote global public goods, the World Bank tries to control communicable diseases such as malaria, delivering vaccines to several parts of the world and joining combat force. In 2000, the bank announced war on AIDS. And in 2011, the bank joined the Stop Tuberculosis Partnership. Traditionally, based on a tacit understanding between the United States and Europe, the president of World Bank has always been selected from candidates nominated by United States. In 2012, for the first time, 2 non-US citizens were nominated. On 23rd March of 2012, US President Barack Obama announced that the United States would nominate Jim Yong Kim as the next president of the bank. Jim Yong Kim was elected on 27 April 2012.
Various developments have brought the Millennium Development Goals targets for 2015 within reach in some cases. For the goals to be realized, 6 criteria must be met: stronger and more inclusive growth, and Africa and fragile states, more effort in health and education, integration of the development and environment agendas, more as well as better aid, movement on the trade negotiations, and stronger and more focused support from multilateral institutions like the World Bank. The criteria are: first, eradicate extreme poverty and hunger; second, achieve universal primary education; third, promote gender equality; fourth, reduce child mortality; 5. Improve maternal health; 6. Combat HIV/AIDS, malaria, and other diseases; 7. Ensure environmental sustainability; and 8. Develop a global partnership for development.
The president of the bank is the president of the entire World Bank Group. The current president, Jun Yong Kim, is responsible for chairing the meetings of the board of directors and for overall management of the bank. Traditionally, the president of the bank has always been U.S. citizens, nominated by the United States, the largest shareholder of the bank. The nominee is subject to confirmation of the board of executive directors to serve for 5 years renewable term, while most World Bank presidents have had banking experience, some have not. The vice presidents of the bank are its principal managers, in charge of regions, sectors, networks, and functions. There are 2 executive vice presidents, 3 senior vice presidents, and 24 vice presidents. The boards of directors consist of the World Bank Group presidents and 25 executive directors. The president is the presiding officer and ordinarily has no vote except the deciding vote in case of an equal division. The executive directors as individuals cannot exercise any power, nor commit or represent the bank unless specifically authorized by the boards or to do so. With the term beginning in 1st November of 2010, the number of executive directors increased by 1 to 25.
In 2010, voting powers at the World Bank were revised to increase the voice of developing countries, notably China. The country with most voting power now is the United States by 15.85%, Japan by 6.84%, China by 4.42%, Germany by 4%, the United Kingdom by 3.75%, France by 3.75%, India by 2.91%, Russia by 2.77%, Saudi Arabia also with 2.77%, and Italy with 2.64%. Under the change, known as the Voice Reform Phase 2, countries other than China that saw significant gains included South Korea, Turkey, Mexico, Singapore, Greece, Brazil, India, and Spain. Most developed countries' voting power was reduced, along with a few developing countries such as Nigeria. The voting powers of the United States, Russia, and Saudi Arabia were unchanged. The changes were brought about with the goal of making voting more universal in regards to standards, rule-based with objective indicators, and transparent among other things. Now, developing countries have an increased voice in the pool model, backed especially by Europe. Additionally, voting power is based on economic size in addition to International Development Association contribution. However, as good as it sounds, the World Bank is not without critics. Many of their projects are allegedly bringing more harm to the poor rather than help them. According to 2015 Investigate report, nearly 3.5 million people have been displaced over the last decade to make room for World Bank funded projects. The organization has ruled for its so-called involuntary resettlement, ensuring that families are not forced from their homes without warning, and that those who are evicted are safely resettled elsewhere.
However, the World Bank has reportedly failed on many occasions to live up to standard of this rule. For instance, in 2007, The bank loaned nearly $70 million to Kenya National Forest Service for conservation project. However, Kenyan authorities reportedly used the money to forcefully evict thousands of indigenous people who had been living in the project area. Between 2007 and 2014, up to 1,000 indigenous homes had been ransacked or burned to ground. Representatives from the World Bank have acknowledged flaws in their voluntary resettlement program, but have yet to make any major change.
This, of course, is not the only criticism the World Bank has. Many allege that loans to developing countries end up in the pocket of corrupt leaders. Others criticize the way institution is governed, in which it gives considerable power to a small number of Western countries. Representatives from the World Bank have said they are looking for a better way of achieving their goals. So while the bank remains a noble entity working to end global poverty, it seems that it has its own problem to fix as well. Nevertheless, since its establishment in 1944, the World Bank is without a doubt and has made major contributions to shape the current world, especially on economics and development. It is now up to them to fix their problem within and continue to face the ever-changing problems and issues within the world.